Good morning, everyone, and happy Ascension Day. That is right. Today is another holiday, another holy day in the church calendar. It is Ascension Day, which happens 40 days after Easter Sunday. So it has already been 40 days since Easter, if you can believe it. And today we remember, as the name implies, Jesus' ascension. Jesus is ascending, going up into heaven to be with God the Father. As the story goes, as the history goes, Jesus, after his resurrection, stayed in the area and met with his disciples. We know the familiar resurrection appearances that we've heard tales of, usually right after Easter, but it actually lasted for a full 40 days, Jesus being with his disciples, giving them his final instructions and just being with them. And then today, Ascension Day, he met with them on a hill outside of Jerusalem. There's actually a very nice church outside of Jerusalem on a hill that commemorates it. He met with them outside of Jerusalem, gave his final words, his final blessing to them, and then he rose up into heaven and ascended to be with God. Now, it's a special day for not just the story, but it tells us certain things about Jesus and about salvation, about our place in the universe. So for one, Jesus, being just as human as the rest of us, now sits at the right hand of the Father. And the idea, the fact that humanity has been raised up to be with God is pretty significant. Not just humanity, but I would say creation in general has been raised up to be with God. This bodily existence has been raised up to be with God. It's pretty significant. It's also seen as the final triumph of that Easter story, not just resurrected, but raised to be with God, Jesus in his final glory. And then the next thing, one of the other things that Jesus says earlier in his ministry is that once he goes, he'll be able, or leaves this plane of existence, he'll be able to send the Holy Spirit to be with his disciples. And in 10 days, we'll have Pentecost, which commemorates that Holy Spirit coming. Now, that's all of the sort of theological stuff that we can get into, and you'll probably hear about on sermons and things if you were to find them. But one of my favorite parts of this story actually comes at the very end of this little installment, and so I'm going to read this passage to you. So they're on this hill outside of Jerusalem. So when they had come together, the disciples asked him, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom to Israel?" He replied, "It is not for you to know the times or periods that the Father has set by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." When he had said this, as they were watching, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. While he was going, and they were gazing up toward heaven, suddenly 2 men in white robes stood by them. They said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking up towards heaven? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven." And that's that. And I really appreciate just the imagery of, like, the disciples, one, still don't really get it. They think, okay, now he's finally going to come and overturn everything and be this political power, that they've been expecting the whole time. And he's like, well, basically shrugs off the question with this, that is not the right question, but tells them that they're going to go out and be his witnesses all over the earth, which is beautiful. And then he goes up into heaven in this powerful scene, and I just imagine the disciples staring there, mouths wide open, just staring at the sky, waiting and wondering what's going to happen next and what they should do, to the point that God or Jesus or whoever had to, send these 2 messengers, these angels, as it were, to come up and say, "Hey guys, he's not coming back right now. You need to, go get a move on. Why are you looking? Why are you staring into space? Go get the job done." And that's what I like about this passage is, one, I find it funny. But 2, this idea of okay, we've had our time to watch and wait and exalt and worship, but we don't just stand there and sit and continue to wait. Now we have our instructions. Now it's time to get a move on. Let's go do the work. And we'll hear that more fully when Pentecost comes, that Holy Spirit that comes and fills us with the power to actually go and do these things, to speak in the power of God, which is wonderful. But in the meantime, today, what I tend to remember from this is that idea of like, all right, it's time to go. Let's do this thing. And I think sometimes we just need to be reminded of that, okay, we've, at the end of a long Lent of waiting and watching, at the end of a long Easter celebration, now we run into the next step, which is actually going out and fulfilling that mission initiative that Jesus has given each one of us. And I was just going to say, you may have ideas about how you want to do that. Perhaps you're going to go and be inspired to go and do something that's been on your heart lately. But one way, if you weren't aware, is to look into this. There's an initiative, a program that's been out for several years now called Thy Kingdom Come. If you haven't heard of it, it is a time of intentional prayer for 10 days, starting today, Ascension Day, and going through to Pentecost, when we are encouraged to intentionally pray every day for 5 people who do not know Christ. 5 people that we know personally, who we would love to have a closer relationship with God, would love to come into that relationship. And you're encouraged to just take time every day to pray for those 5 people. This year, they're actually expanding it and asking you to pray for 5 more people on top of those first 5 more people who have perhaps lost any connection with the church. People who know Christ, who've been coming to church, but through this pandemic have fallen away for whatever reason, and perhaps haven't had any connection. So if you know of those people as well, take time to pray for 5 more every day, that they might come back into the fold, into the church fold, however that might look, through virtual things online, through coming in person when we open the doors, or just through being connected in their own way. I'll try and I'll post a link somewhere around here, or you can search for it, Thy Kingdom Come. But I would encourage you to at least sit down and pray for those 10 people over the next 10 days. Prayer works, and it's worth giving it a shot and being active. We can't always go and physically do something, but every one of us can pray. That is something we can all do, regardless of our age or stature or any of it. So go out and pray over the next 10 days, and we'll see where God takes us. So take care. Have a good day.